Hello and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. On behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you have joined us for the Precious Metals and Critical Minerals Conference. Our next presentation of the day is from PolarX. Please note you may submit questions for the presenter in the box to the left of the slides. You can also view a company's availability for a one-on-one meeting by clicking Book Meeting in the top toolbar. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome Mark Bojanjak, Executive Chairman of PolarX, which trades on the OTCQB venture market under the symbol PXXXF and on the ASX under the symbol PXX. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Greg. First time here. We've been listed on the OTCQB for a whole week now, so I know with some degree of confidence we're new to everybody listening to this at the moment. On the OTC front. We're an unusual product in that we're an Australian listed company. Both of our projects are in North America. We're backed by one of the world's largest gold miners in Northern Star Resources. They're both a 14% shareholder of ours, and we've just recently signed a $39 million US joint venture with them, where they're earning into our Alaska project. I'll talk to you a little more about that shortly. We're near production in Alaska. It's an earlier stage in Nevada, but we're surrounded by 5 million ounce gold mines, and you'll see a little more of that later as well. So if you're going to look at listing in the next few days, we're definitely worth considering. We're already capitalised at 55 million Australian at the moment. That's about 35 million US metrics. The cash balances you see there for both cash in the bank and our joint venture balance as we speak, both in Australian dollars, minus 30% converts to US dollars, essentially on the 0.65 exchange rate. As I said, Northern Star are a 14% holder of us. They've been there for a couple of years now. They're not alone though. Ruffer, which is a UK large gold fund, is in there with 7%. They've been there for quite a few years now. US Global, which is over your side, they're an Arizona-based gold investor headed by Frank Holmes. And if you've ever got on Kitco, along with Rick Rule and many others, he's one of the more active Coventry people in terms of gold and silver in particular. Lundin Mining, which is Canadian, they've been there since 2019, and management and directors with options or warrants in your terms. Management speaks are about 6% as I'm speaking at the moment. To the left, I'm not going to labour resumes. It's essentially me. I started life as a chartered accountant, but that's not really what I spent my career. Realistically, the last 35 years has been in mining. We've been fortunate. You know, we've had 5 projects with teams of people, some overlapping, and brought every one of them to a mine. And we're pretty certain we've got another 2 mines within PolarX right now. 2 doctor geologists run the show. There's Jason Burton, who's managing director. We both happen to be at Mines and Muddy in London at present. So he's doing a public presentation right now, and I'm doing this one. So the background you see here is my hotel room, you know, the exotic life of an executive chairman. And Jason's at Mines and Money with quite a busy crowd there, actually, given the run-up in copper, gold and silver prices for the last few months. Similarly, Fraser Tabiat's another doctor at Level Geo. He was MD up until nearly 4 years ago now, and is currently developing other projects in Australia as we speak. It's a very tight share register. You know, well over half of it is in the top 20 holders, and 2/3 of it's controlled by the top 50. The elephant in the room right now is really a joint venture with Northern Star. Now, this is fresh. It was literally only sanctioned by shareholders a week ago, last Tuesday afternoon, in fact. It's a $39 million spend. Northern Star are earning into our projects in Alaska, in what we have grouped together and called the Alaska Range Project. There's good reason for that. They are our northern neighbour in Alaska with their Pogo Gold Project. They'll be earning up to 70% over the next 5 years, and unusually, we're the ones managing it. So they have in fact, they're one of the world's best gold miners. I think they're at the top, certainly in the top 10. I think they're ranked at about 4 at the moment in terms of actual gold production worldwide. They're miners. They're very good underground miners. They're well recognised for that and been very successful at that. Whereas we're explorers, and the two together are actually quite a good team. They have quite a tight patch in Alaska. We have a very large tract of ground, which probably has 20 or 30 years of exploration ahead of it. You'll see more of that shortly. But the takeaways from that slide is there's the best part of 40 million US to be spent of Northern Star's money earning into our project in Alaska, with us doing the work to turn it into a mineable position, which they could at their election both analyse, finance internally, build and run. And we would sit in with a residual 30%. So us doing what we're good at in exploring, them doing what they're good at, and ultimately financing and mining it. And the structure takes away the one thing that most juniors fall foul of, and that is the ability to actually competently finance something and bring it to production. You generally would be forced into a hedge you didn't want. You generally would have to build a complete mining team, etc. We don't have any of those hurdles here. We have a partner that can finance it and build it and run it, and they can do so in Alaska because they're already doing it just north of us at Pogo. So it's a good fit. And they happen to be based in Perth, Western Australia, which is where I'm based. So there's a good familiarity between us. We can come back to this at some future time, but there are existing resources in Alaska. They're measured and indicated status, and they're production ready. We've actually run a scoping study a couple of years ago to prove that this would work. And I'll come back to that also. Let's focus on Alaska. It's where we started, and we chose it for a few reasons, but one of the main ones was that the geology there is just exceptionally good. And it's overlaid with the fact that it's had incredibly little work done geologically in the last 100 years. It really has been a bit of a forgotten frontier within the USA. And we first went there and looked at some of the geological opportunities available and were literally gobsmacked. There are things there staring you in the face that would have been done in Australia 50 or 100 years ago that are compelling by modern standards with modern techniques. A little look at it. Certainly most Australians I speak to think Alaska's part of Canada, and it's certainly not the case. It belongs to USA, and thank God for it, because a lot of our permitting aspects are a lot more simple than they might be in Canada. When you look there and spend a little time on those slides, there are some very large new discoveries in places like Pebble, Donlin, etc., which are in the hundreds of millions of ounces of silver and gold discoveries. You don't see that often. In fact, the largest mine in Australia, I think, dials in at about 60 million ounces, whereas Pebble's 107 million ounces. And that was optimised some time ago at a much, much lower gold price, less than half current. We are not in a remote area. If you have a look at the centre of that slide there, where it says Denali Highway, we're right on that, literally just north of it. And north of that again is Pogo, which is Northern Star's mine. So Northern Star are a 14% shareholder, as I said, and they are the very party that we have a joint venture with. The point here is that if we can prove up something that's big enough to move the dial on 25 million US billion market capitalisation in Northern Star, it's as sure as hell going to move the dial for PolarX with more like a 25 million US market capitalisation. So we're chasing something big here with their money, where we're doing the work. As I said, we're not remote, we're not in permafrost. You can explore year round. We choose to only explore from May through to about November at the latest, because if you're looking for something that wasn't there yesterday, you need to be able to see what you're doing. For those that mine, all of them mine 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 12 months a year. It's pretty much the norm there. We're only 20 miles from Seal Tarmac. We're about 250 miles from Anchorage, which is on the coast, and lesser distance from Fairbanks to the north of us, which is pretty much the mining hub of Alaska, where most of the things you'll ever need are readily available. So drill rigs, machinery, fuel, spare parts, building materials, the standard things you need, energy and so on. A quick look at us. Now, forgive this for being in metric, because the Australian system's metric, but I'll try and roughly convert to miles. 35 kilometres of tenure, completely under our control. Now, where it's been sampled, it's mineralised for copper, gold and silver from surface over all of it. Now, in mileage terms, that's the best part of 20 miles, where we control the whole lot. It didn't look like that when we first got it. It was a matter of agglomerating a number of things together over the last decade. And anybody that owned part of it in the past never had the picture that you're seeing there on the right-hand side. They're largely our soil samples, previous parties' work in bits that we've stitched together into that broad, holistic opportunity you see there. We've two existing resources at JORC standard, or 43101 in your terms, both for copper and gold exactly, and for copper and silver down at Caribou Dome. Most of the work has been done at Caribou Dome, and the reason for that is it's literally 5% copper from surface. And in fact, some of it's even in the 20% range in copper. It comes with accordant silver, and it's nothing to see in the order of 13%, like that slice you see there of core, with over 20 grams in silver. Now, we never used to count the silver much because it was a fairly modest value, but the truth is, at current silver price of nearly $60 US an ounce, it really matters. And in fact, it would likely pay for the entire mining cost of Caribou Dome on its own. I'll try and capture that in a section here on the right-hand side. What's most characteristic about Caribou, other than its exceptional grade, is the fact that it starts from surface. So you're not talking about having to dig a lot of pre-strip to get to it. You're on it. You're standing on it from get-go. And that means lower mining cost, essentially. Now, ultimately, we think we've drilled it down at the moment to about 350 metres from surface, and it still continues. We expect it'll continue for more than a kilometre, to be brutally honest with you. And we're starting to extend it at depth and further along its strike at the moment. It's fairly modest size at the moment, but we expect that to continue. We expect it'll actually be an underground mine. But what you do find is, because of its surface expression, you can pretty much get plant payback in around a year just with an open pit mining scenario down to 150 metres. So it really is something which I can assure you would have been done in Australia 100 years ago even. It is one of the better grade projects in the world, and it's certainly one of the best in a safe jurisdiction like USA. Africa has some fabulous deposits, but it comes with African political risk. This doesn't. It's USA. There's a look at it. This is as recent as a few weeks ago. We have literally just rolled off drilling this season in Alaska, and we are waiting for assays. I could tell you that the visuals look good. When you're in this stuff, you know it. It's bright, goldy green chalcopyrite in high grade, and it largely reported fresh discoveries deeper and along strike wherever we drilled this year. So we're expecting those assays any week now. We drill core drilling or diamond core drilling in Alaska, and we interrogate it strongly so that we understand the structures, what's controlling it, and try and predict where the next holes should go so that we're not wasting money. Once we've dialed that in, we can RC drill it, which is much cheaper and quicker. which is pretty much what we do in Nevada. We did a scoping study 2 years ago now. I'm happy to say it was resoundingly positive. We did that not so much to flashy NPVs, but to determine how we could improve it more. And we know now that pushing Caribou deeper makes the most money, and pushing strike exactly, which I'll show you shortly, makes the most money. So that's pretty well the program forward. Fortunately, since we did that, the gold price has more than doubled. The silver price has pretty well doubled exactly, and copper's up 30%. And if you go back to these metrics, top line's US dollars, it more than doubles the NPV on this. In fact, the NPV in US dollars, as I speak, current metrics is about 900 million US at a 7% discount. The payback is well over 100%. In fact, you'd get plant payback on these metrics in 9 months. And there's not many projects that do that. Now, whilst that's very profitable, or would be very profitable on building, what it isn't is optimal, because we think it's much bigger than what we've modelled it at. So really the joint venture with Northern Star has completely been driven at, let's find out how big it is, and then build something that's right-sized for it, rather than build something that's big enough for what we've drilled so far. That's never going to be totally optimal. We flew a lot of magnetics this year. We did a lot of regional work, which we wouldn't normally do, and we did that with confidence because we've got the joint venture money coming from Northern Star. We've got the best part of 5 to 10 million US a year to spend now. We've never had that sort of money. We can really chase the big picture. Caribou and Zackley are pretty exciting due to their grade in copper, gold, silver, but we do know from previous soil sampling work that there are some much, much bigger targets than that we've never put a foot on until this year. Zackley's a little different to Caribou. It's copper and gold. It is set amongst a shear zone there. We think there's something much bigger up the hill from it. It was discovered in the 1960s, 70s, but the only part which is literally in the reserve is this red bit out here to the left on that top section you're seeing there. And everything out to the right-hand side is scout drilling we did a couple of years ago. We know we're in mineralisation. In fact, some of those holes that we drilled since the resource are up to 50 metres at 3 grams per tonne copper, and 1 to 2%, 3 grams per tonne gold rather, and 1 to 2% copper from surface. That sort of discovery on its own is enough for a mine. None of that is in the current resource reserve yet. So there's a lot to be added, which we know is there, with the budget we now have from the Northern Star joint venture. We will be doing, now because we have the money coming from Northern Star, we started to look at some of the regional potential as well. To date, as a smaller company, we've been necessarily forced to focus on what I would term as low-hanging fruit. The stuff that you knew you could take to a mine in relatively short order, but never really had a budget to chase something really big. Something that might be big enough to move the dial for a Northern Star as a $25 billion US company. So we started to look at the areas where we knew there were big targets, which had literally no work and have never been drilled. What you're seeing there is up the hill from Zackley. In the middle of that is Jason Burton, the MD. And on the right-hand side is the sort of material we're taking off the top. Now, anybody with even the remotest geological knowledge would know what you're looking at there is copper oxide. We know it'll come with some gold because we've soil sampled bits of this before and got gold in it as well. What we don't know is the grade. So we've taken 150 grab samples from this. They're in the lab at present. We just want to see what it might dial into as a copper-gold matrix. But it's starting to shape up as a 5 by 4 kilometre target, which has never been drilled. And it's far, far in excess of anything we've currently been testing. So it looks pretty exciting. Further up from it again is Senator. Likewise, it's been sampled for copper, gold, silver, and soil samples before, but if you look at some of that area there, you can see the alteration in the hillside. Again, never been drilled. We do have grab samples off this at the moment, which are in the lab. But again, it's a massive target, which could really change history here. And you really will need a partner like Northern Star to fund that into the future. And the intent here really is simple. It's let's get Zackley and Caribou into a mineable position, which are probably more than double their current size. Get that running with Northern Star's help, and at the same time prove up what might be the next 20 or 30 years of mining horizon in targets like the two I've just shown you. Again, you can see the scale of alteration here in the hill opposite in the background. You know, there's literally 2, 3, 4 kilometres of material there, which we've never sampled, yet you can see the alteration in the hillside. So we're pretty excited about that at the moment. More of the same. I mean, it's literally staring you in the face. So there's lots to choose from. Now, generally, this might be covered in snow from this time of the year until about May. So you're not going to see this sort of thing in winter. So we explore it really from May through to end of October comfortably, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So you kind of effectively get a year's work done in the 6 months that you're there. There is evidence of porphyry. We think it's probably a big IOCG type system at the moment as well. It's early days. There's a lot of scratching to go yet before the guys dial in what style of deposit it is. But at the end of the day, I don't think I care. If it carries copper, gold, and silver and commercial grades, it'll be mined. Understanding the geology will merely define it. It's drill holes that'll turn it into payable dirt. It's not the only story. We're also in Nevada. We have chosen the 2 best jurisdictions in the USA. I can assure you we only chase good projects. Nevada's completely different. It's gold and silver, and we're on a patch of tenure there, which has been untouched for 100 years. In fact, the guys in Inset were the last people to do anything of a meaningful nature, and it hadn't even been broadly soil sampled until us in the last 3 years. I don't know you'd know much about Nevada, but all you do need to know is that 75% of the gold produced in USA each year comes from Nevada in broad scale, modest grade projects, much like the one you're looking at here. And that was partly what attracted us to it. We're in an area surrounded by existing heap leach, large scale gold mines. We're literally less than a mile up the hill from a 5 million ounce gold mine on tenure, which has never been drilled. South of us is a 400 million ounce silver mine owned by Core Mining at Rochester, which is a well-known mine. And between them and us at the 4th of July is Spring Valley, which is a brand new one. It was recently financed this month, or November rather, by Wheaton to the tune of $680 million, and that'll be constructed over the next 2 years. And now north of them is us. And when I say north, it's only 3 or 4 kilometres or a couple of miles north on fresh tenure, which is only had the current work that we've done in the last 2 to 3 years. Particular grades in rock chips. Now, rock chips are fine, but they don't make gold mines. They do tell you there's gold there, though. And some of those are in the hundreds of grams per tonne in low and very high grade gold in quartz, free gold in quartz. So the old timers you saw a few slides ago were mining exactly that kind of thing. We've done some drilling there. We got 9 metres at 124. This is actually an enormous low-grade halo. It's enormous low-grade halo is what our neighbours are mining. They're mining very low-grade material. Go back a slide. You know, the head grade at Spring Valley is about 0.5 grams per tonne. The head grade at Florida Canyon next to us is 0.4 grams a tonne. So you don't need very much grade in gold to make a very profitable mine. And what we think is we're going to have modest grades in that order or better, and within it'll be some very high grade quartz from these sorts of rock chip samples we're seeing. This picture sums it up. That's drilling up the top here from us. We've literally been drilling that up until last week, and at the bottom there in that circle is the Florida Canyon gold mine at the bottom of the hill. As I said, 5 million ounces in what we know as payable geology. We're drilling tenure here that has never been sampled or tested prior to us. The first thing we did here was soil sampled it. There's a 3 kilometre long anomaly. We ran IP work over that as well, or inverse polarity. It overlays the soils. That's exactly what we drilled. We could only drill a little bit of it in the month we spent on site last month, but there's about a 3 kilometre long anomaly there. And when you overlay that with being surrounded by millions of ounces in producers next door, there's a very high probability we're going to have a geology at least equal or better than our neighbours. I'm not going to dwell on that too much. We're in good old USA. We use USA suppliers, etc., to drill it. We've had a very good relationship with all of our service providers there. We're a relatively small company. We have a big budget in Alaska, obviously funded by Northern Star, but Nevada's 100% ours. So we aim to add a lot of value for that, to that, and on our own steam, raising equity. We've chosen to market on OTCQB in USA for one reason. US projects in exactly the right commodities, copper, gold, silver, at frankly the best time to go mining in the last 20 years. You could either be a supporter of the Trump government or not, but you know, for us in our sector, the freeing up of permitting and the ability to get on with business has never been better in my lifetime in USA as right now. So we're getting a lot of support that might not have otherwise have been there. Busy calendar forward. We're waiting for assays both in Alaska and in Nevada right now. So there's fresh news to come, which has already been paid for. It's an excellent entry time for that reason. You know, we don't need to raise money to drill them. We've already drilled them. So looking at our stock right now would make a lot of sense. There's a resource statement there with the usual disclaimers, etc. There are a few questions, and I've only got a couple of minutes to answer them. One is, what's our strategy for maintaining insider support whilst raising development capital? Well, you know, we're open books, probably the best description for that. Sure, the top 50 do own 2/3 of it. We're more than happy to do some commercial, what I'd describe as retail raise as well. I'd like to do that in USA because USA understands what we're doing. I'm not that familiar with USA mining, and I think there's a better audience for our projects in USA than there is in Australia, is the absolute truth. Australia's had its go. It hasn't given us full value for it. We are seeing North American companies buy Australian companies with the USA asset for 3 times their Australian market capitalisation. So we know that they're undervalued and they're paying cash for them. Another question, other opportunity for low-cost loans, etc. An interesting question, actually. I had a discussion today at Mines and Money with somebody I describe as a middleman with some intel into the US government on some of those things. Certainly gold and silver are both critical minerals, and I think silver's on the list as well. So we will apply. I'm not sure how that's going to work yet. It's early days because some of these concessions have only just been granted, but we certainly are going to chase that. Interesting question here. How are we going to find the CapEx? Well, a word, Northern Star Resources is the obvious. Yes, it will depend on whether they want to build it or they don't. But what you can say is, having spent $39 million US on this, if it's not big enough for them, we'll find another way to finance it on a smaller basis with another party, be that equity or be that debt, or be that with another JV partner. That's already agreed between us. Now, at the end of the day, I think we're going to be building something much bigger than our scoping study, and it'll be Northern Star sized. And so do they. They haven't entered into this joint venture to find anything other than something big enough. Question about Zackley, if we've got time. Can I quantify the exploration upside? Sure. We've drilled 2.8 kilometres of strike outside the existing resource statement there in Zackley, including hits of 50 metres at 3 grams per tonne gold from surface, yet none of that is in the current resource. So there's lots of upside from that. It just needs infill drilling, basically, and we now have a budget to do that. Another question, one drill hole, 124 grams. That's one we drilled 2 years ago. It wasn't where we drilled this year. We drilled what we thought was the best of it this year. 2 years ago, we drilled what was easy to get to. We didn't expect to hit high grade. That was an accident, I'll tell you that. Well, we did prove in concept there's low grade everywhere, over 1.5 kilometres at ore grade material, which would be ore grade for next door. And every now and then you do get a sugar hit like this. Yes, Northern Star are interested in that as well. And we're jealously guarding it until we find out what we've got. It's too easy to deal that too early. The value uplift is 100% ours now. We want 100% of the value for it right now and doing our work on it. How on earth do we attract Northern Star? Quality projects with people they know and trust, because one of the mines they mined in Australia was developed and found by a team of mine 30 years ago. Northern Star mined that very happily for 8 or 10 years, and it's been mined by another Australian company, and it's still going. So they know I'm good for my word, and it's not me, it's quality geological teams below me is the only reason this metric works. Another question on doubling Caribou in 2023. What confidence level do I have of doing that again? About 99%. I say that because we know it carries deeper. We know it's a long strike. Frankly, we've proved that this year. Hasn't been assay announced yet, but we saw it in the visuals. So we've got a high degree of confidence of expanding Caribou. Another one about regulatory environment, PEA, etc. One thing I should mention is where we are in Alaska, there's nobody living on our tenure. There is no native title requirement at all. And we have a constructive Alaskan government on state-owned tenure, and they're the only party we need to deal with. Now, not to say if there were native title requirements where we are, there aren't, but if there were, they are very commercial people. They own fuel companies, hotels, mining suppliers, vehicles, hotels. They are very commercial. Now, where we are, we don't have any of that, yet we're not remote. We're only 7 miles off the Denali Highway and 20 miles off of sealed tarmac. So there you have it. It's probably the one OTC company you're going to see that's major backed yet on the OTC. I expect to go higher up the food chain than that. We've got to start somewhere on a US market, and this is it. So you're looking at it at the right time. I think we're over time. So on that note, I'll do the polite thing and sign off. Our contact details are on that final slide. I'd welcome contact from any of you directly by email or even phone. I'll certainly tell you as it is. Thank you, and bye for now.